can give is if you hold your arms across your chest, fold them, and then you remove them and do it the other way, the way you don't normally do. And how does that feel? Feels
awkward.
It feels awkward, uncomfortable. So whenever we do something that we don't ordinarily do, something that's difficult, we feel awkward. And that's out of our comfort zone. What do you have to say about it?
Well, it's natural that people want to remain in their comfort zone because they feel secure, but this is false security. And they create something. And even if they know that they have to stretch, then they stretch a little bit and then create another comfort zone. So my recommendation to people is that never remain where you are, but always try to go forward, to grow, to develop, to advance, because this life is meant for elevating our consciousness and for advancing and for evolving to a higher level. So if you stay in one place, then you will not be able to grow.
You know, Srila Prabhupada always describes Krishna consciousness as a dynamic process.
Yes.
It means it's moving and growing. And like you say, we often hear, if you're not moving up, you're going to be going down.
Yeah.
And that Krishna is unlimited, Krishna is always expanding, he's always becoming more beautiful. And we're always endeavoring to expand our service. I was once thinking if we did a journal or did a book on the success principles of devotees, and what are the principles of people who are advancing in Krishna consciousness, I think you would see this constant effort to improve, to do better. How can I do my service better, or how can I expand it?
Constant and ever-ending improvement.
Yes.
That's the principle that we have to follow. And it's in line with Srila Prabhupada's teachings. He never stood still, and he was never satisfied with what have been accomplished, but he always wanted more and pushed his disciples to preach more, to expand the mission, to give opportunity to many more people to take to Krishna consciousness.
You know that story when the devotees were in India on a train, and the train stopped in Delhi, or just before the train was coming to Delhi, a person met Prabhupada and said, we should have a temple in Delhi. So then they got to Delhi, and then Prabhupada picked a few devotees and said, okay, you get off here and start a temple. So that's an example of how you could say, in a sense, Prabhupada didn't exist within a comfort zone. It was just, for Krishna, you do whatever you have to do. You go here, you go start a temple here, young boy, 20 years old, you go here, you start a temple here. That was the mood of Srila Prabhupada.
Yes, he was speaking about thinking big, shooting for the rhinoceros. And although Srila Prabhupada gave an example of an ant who was helping Lord Ramachandra to build the bridge to Lanka with his small effort, and he would appreciate it as he would appreciate the work of the monkeys who were able to throw big boulders into the sea. But at the same time, I think we can all do much more than we are doing. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Parusham Nrishu, I am the ability in man. So in one sense, there is no limit how much we can achieve if we want to achieve more for Krishna, and if we properly connect to Him, and if we have faith that He can help us. But if we find some, comfortable life and just try to save ourselves and chant and be like a closet devotee, this will not help us. It's actually, to me, it's actually hellish to be like a pious person and go to church or a temple occasionally and just try to save yourself. This is not the mood of Lord Chaitanya. This is not the mood of our movement. We always want to extend ourselves to help others and to save others. And it's actually very uncomfortable life.
Well, one of the, you could say, mottos that Prabhupada had was just try it or just do it and Krishna will help. Because there was always, not always, but often, there was a fear of what I can do, what's possible, especially you look at the early days of the movement, we're all very young, little experience in the world. So naturally, we feel we'll have certain limitations based on our abilities, our level of intelligence, and so forth. When I was giving a course on vows, one thing I realized was that whenever we're trying to do something, we often look at our own abilities, our strengths, our weaknesses, and then we analyze what we can achieve based on that, as opposed to what you're saying. It's like, no, it's a partnership with Krishna, or even more than a partnership. He's doing most of it. We're showing the desire, he's making it happen. So when we look at it that way, then breaking out of the comfort zone is much easier because we don't feel it's all so dependent on us.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a very important point. And I was teaching in my coaching courses the SMART model for goal setting. And I remember running it by you, and you gave this wonderful point that why you should set realistic goals, set unrealistic goals. Because by setting realistic goals, you actually limit yourself to what you can achieve. So it's in line with Srila Prabhupada's teachings that go for the impossible and then see what God allows you to achieve.
I was once told by a devotee, I haven't read this, but he told me Prabhupada said, if you shoot for first class, you'll get second class. And if you shoot for second class, you'll get fifth class.
Oh, Krishna.
So I think that's in line with shoot the rhinoceros. And the interesting thing is when Prabhupada gave that example, he said, and if you don't kill the rhinoceros, there's no problem because everyone's going to say, well, you couldn't do that anyway. We're a lot of times we're up against this fear of failure type thing. I don't want to do it because I might fail. Whereas if you make your goal so big, it's almost as if you're doing it just to be bold for Krishna, and you don't even think you can do it. So if you fail, you're less worried about it because the idea was so large to begin with. So it can help you if you have some fear that I might fail if I do this. Well, I just made such a big goal. If I fail, it's to be expected.
Fear of failure is one of the greatest obstacles to success. And sometimes devotees try to cover fear of failure with, false humility. Oh, I'm not a big devotee. I'm going to stay in the back, and I will just do something little. And but actually, they're capable of doing much more. So this is like an excuse to not take risks. One teacher said that the greatest risk in life is actually living without risk.
Yeah, I heard another saying, because you learn by failing, it's better to fail early and often, because that way you learn more quickly.
The founder of IBM said, fail forward fast. You have to increase the rate of failure in order to get to your success quicker. And Prabhupada also said that failure is a pillar of success.
Also, a lot of things that Prabhupada did, he was testing. And recently I heard Hari Sari give a talk about japa. And he told a little bit about the history of japa. With initially Prabhupada wanting us to chant 64 rounds, and then going to 32 and then going to 16. When the devotee said, we're not able to do 64, we're not able to do 32. And then Prabhupada said, 16 minimum you must do. And then they said, okay, we can do that. And then he was asked, I don't know, Hari Sari or someone asked him, said, Prabhupada, well, why did you start at 64 and then go to 32 and then, settle on 16? And Prabhupada said, I was just experimenting to see what worked. So he wasn't, and he also said the same thing about the Gurukul. He once said, the Gurukul, he titled it the Gurukula Experiment. So he wants to see, can we do this? Let's try. If it didn't work, it wasn't a problem for him.
So this is in line with the top world marketing trends. Marketing gurus say test, 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 and see what works. So Srila Prabhupada was very intelligent in how to implement things and how to test things. And we can see what works for us. We can start small, and then there is no limit to how much you can expand. But the most important thing is to somehow work on developing that desire to do something. We all want to achieve something. We are I would say, goal-achieving entities. We want to achieve something. We want to leave a legacy. We want to leave something behind us. We feel happy when we make something. I believe that person who made this guitar that is here in your studio, he was happy that this guitar works well. It plays well. So we want to do something significant, and it's not that's not bad. If we want to do something significant for Krishna, we should do it. And Krishna has given us so much ability and talents and skills, and we are just not using it. We are running on 20% of our potential. We should definitely look into it and maybe have a discussion with someone, with a fellow devotee friend or a coach, and then see, what is this that I'm not using? Look around. I have this experience.
Well, let me say something on this.
Right.
One of the things that I teach in my seminars is, if you look at your comfort zone, and then you look at the things that you want to achieve that you haven't achieved, they're all out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So if you look at your comfort zone as a circle, outside that circle you have a box. And on that box, or on the end of the box, this is not a box, a square outside the circle, those are all the things you want. But because it's outside your comfort zone, you may be unwilling to change or do what's necessary to achieve those things. So it's important to understand that most likely what you want to achieve is going to require some level of change of attitude, of
Stretch.
behavior, some form of stretch. It's kind of like we want to stay in our comfort zone, but achieve what we're not achieving. And as they say, you can't, if you want to achieve something different, you have to act and think differently. So if we acknowledge that, and I think acknowledge what you're saying, is that there'll be a deeper level of satisfaction. Because if we're afraid to go out of the comfort zone, there's a fear. What's the fear? That I'll suffer outside the comfort zone. But actually, if we see, no, I won't suffer, I'll achieve a greater level of empowerment, a greater connection with my Guru and Krishna, a deeper level of satisfaction for surrendering more, then that can encourage us.
I think Krishna is offering challenges to us in different ways, and we can become an expert in avoiding these challenges and justifying why I'm not taking this, taking that. But taking risk is very much present in Srila Prabhupada's teachings. If you type risk on the database, I think you will find a lot of quotes which actually support this point. But I have learned that there is 3 zones: comfort zone, stretch zone, and the panic zone. So I'm not asking you to set your goals in the panic zone. This is too much at the moment. But stretch zone is a bit scary, but you can still make it, and you can still stretch, and you can still try, and you can still take a risk. So we are not being unreasonable here. We are asking people to stretch at least a little bit and a little bit more. And the thing is that you will feel better about yourself and about how you deal with life and who you are if you do these things. But if you just try to avoid things in life, avoid confronting what you need to change, avoid taking risks, you will never feel good. You will feel miserable.
You know what I often say? That you're talking about the stretch zone.
Right.
And comparing that to the comfort zone. I always say the comfort zone is actually uncomfortable because it's not where we want to be. And as Peter Burwash says, he doesn't call it the comfort zone, he calls it the coffin. Because in the coffin, you are no longer alive, obviously, and therefore you're not growing. So in the comfort zone, we're not growing. When I was 20 years old, I just turned 20, a few months after I turned 20, I was asked to be the president of a temple, in which there were only 3 other devotees. And this temple was in Vancouver. And I was at that time in the San Francisco temple. And that was a very thriving temple. There was about 25 devotees. So to go to Vancouver, to be only with 3 other devotees, was difficult, what to speak of the lack of experience I had in doing that service. But what we find by confronting these situations, accepting them, is we learn so much. We grow so much, we become so much more qualified. So if we want to grow as individuals, if we want to grow in our service, in a sense, we have to go out of our comfort zone. Otherwise, we're existing in our coffin where there's no growth.
Yeah, no growth, no life. And Spiritual life becomes mechanical. And I don't understand, how can a devotee feel secure and peaceful in a situation where he doesn't take risks, where he doesn't stretch? Because he knows the philosophy. He knows what is our philosophy. He knows that he is not this body. He knows that Krishna will challenge him. He knows that he has to be equal in happiness and distress, face, confront the dualities of this world. And how he can create a situation where, everything is nice, watch TV or whatever, do some whatever sense gratification, and then think that I'm okay. But Arjuna, Krishna asked Arjuna to kill. And he's not asking us to kill, but he's at least asking us to preach. So if we are not preaching, we cannot be alive.
Also, Prabhupada writes that Krishna does not like casual.
What's that?
He uses the word casual.
Casual.
There's that saying, if something is worth doing, it's worth doing well.
Uh-huh.
So I think this is a very important attitude. If we're going to take the trouble to do bhakti, to do sadhana, to chant our rounds, whatever, we should do it well. We shouldn't do it casually, haphazardly, do it fighting the modes of ignorance. We should, so I think what goes along with the idea of stretching is that if we take something seriously and we want to do it well, naturally the stretch will be there because we'll always be thinking, how can I do it better? What's the next step? How can we improve?
Yeah.
Just like Prabhupada said, okay, you've distributed so many books, this year double it. And then Prabhupada said, he said, my guru was always pushing me, and I'm always pushing you, and you push others. So he said that's the natural process of doing something well, is to always being pushing. And what we're saying here is, if no one else is pushing us, we have to push ourselves.
Yeah. So if you push yourself, then you will not be pushed by Maya and by material energy and ultimately destroyed. It's better that we push ourselves voluntarily than wait for the material energy to really get on our case.
Good point. In other words, we're going to be pushed anyway.
Yeah. We are small. We always depend either on the material energy or on the spiritual energy. So by pushing ourselves, we align ourselves with the spiritual energy, we align ourselves with Krishna, and we basically surrender.
I think one of the problems that comes up often in the lack of desire to stretch is that a devotee is not particularly inspired in their service, or they may not even have a service, or they just haven't connected with what their mission is. And I once heard this lecture in which this person said something that really stuck with me. He said, ultimately you don't become inspired by others, you become inspired by yourself. You inspire yourself through your connection with what inspires you. And we see this so often when a person finds a service that inspires them, they're thinking about it, and they're thinking about it all the time. They're thinking about how to improve it, how to make it better. They're telling other people about it. They're getting other people involved. The enthusiasm is contagious. So I think a lot. I was thinking, well, how would we address somebody who's in the comfort zone, who feels they can't get out of the comfort zone? And I think this is one important aspect of it, to look for something that's so inspiring that you're automatically shooting out of your comfort zone.
This is wonderful. I think that's one of the best solutions for getting out of the mushy comfort zone, to find your mission, to find your voice, to find your dharma, to find your long-term project and focus on it. And then you will be more inspired even to take risks, to stretch, to do anything to make it work, because you want to make it work. Srila Prabhupada said that it's very advantageous if devotee does something he likes to do. Last night I was saying in the class that it's good. First several years we were doing the needful, but actually it's good to specialize. And if you see any long-term successful devotee, they all specialize in something.
I think where sometimes devotees get hung up is that on the one hand you have the idea of self-sacrifice, you have the idea of surrender, and the connotation of surrender is giving up of personal desire. So then looking at what I should be connected with or what inspires me sometimes seems a bit antagonistic to the idea of surrender, that now I'm becoming selfish, or maybe even a dharmic. I'm not, duty should be something that comes to me, not from within me. And so how would you instruct somebody who's looking at it that way?
Well, with the help of a spiritual guide or a spiritual coach, or if possibly your spiritual master, you can actually find out, discover what is your nature, what are your inclinations, what is it that you would like to do, and then start doing it and see if it works, see how it works for you. And then become very good at what you do, become expert, learn also from the outside experts, and perfect the art or the science of what you are doing. And in this way, feel satisfied. Srila Prabhupada instructed Jagadish Maharaj that, or actually he instructed a new devotee who was working under him as a temple president. He said he should find you an engagement that is inspiring for you, that you like to do. And then it's also then it would also be easier to follow other rules and regulations because you're inspired.
I think an important reality. There's two important realities. The one point you said is that if you see any successful person, they're very specialized. So no matter what the service the Guru gives, you will see devotees gravitate towards a particular way in which they can do that service. So Prabhupada said distribute books. So some people were involved in the production aspect of it. Some people were involved in the distribution of the book. Some people were involved in the organization of the distribution. So they were all doing it according to their individual desire. Some people were involved in editing.
Yeah.
So
I did that. Also translate.
I was talking to a devotee yesterday, and we were talking about what he wants to do in devotional service and in his material life, and he was saying that the problem he's having is motivation. He said, sometimes I just wake up and I don't want to get up because there's nothing to look forward to. So in one letter, Prabhupada said, if we lose our enthusiasm, everything is finished. So I feel strongly that enthusiasm is so fundamental that whatever is required for us to be enthusiastic, we have to do that. We have to gravitate toward that. We have to grab it. And generally we see that when a devotee is engaged in something which is very inspiring, naturally there's enthusiasm. And because enthusiasm is fundamental, utsahan, it's the first principle Rupa Goswami advises. So you can't always be enthusiastic about something you're not enthusiastic about. You can, in a sense, because it's the order of your guru, but because we are not, all of us are not that elevated, generally speaking, to maintain high levels of enthusiasm, we need to be very connected with our nature to the service.
I say to devotees that it is your responsibility to be inspired every single day and to be motivated every single day. It's not something that will fall from the sky. So this is one of the responsibilities of a devotee, to make sure he is inspired, whether it's first-class rounds, whether it's hearing the tape or the class in the temple, having an inspiring coaching session or a conversation with a devotee, whatever it takes, you have to be inspired, and then you can achieve wonderful things for Krishna throughout the day.
I think it's a great point, because a lot of times we become overly dependent on being inspired
by somebody else.
By someone else.
Yeah.
Like I can't go on unless I get an encouraging word here, or not that we don't need encouragement, and not that we're not supposed to be encouraged by hearing and chanting, but the idea of self-encouragement. I read this one thing that has helped me so much, and this author wrote, it said, if you want encouragement, encourage yourself. If you want kindness, be kind to yourself. If you want love, love yourself. That often the people who are most in need of the encouragement or the kindness or self-affection and so forth are the ones that are not giving it to themselves, and that's why they become. You have this idea of codependence. You become so dependent on somebody outside giving you something that if you don't get it, you can't function. And that's not in the empowered position of devotional service.
That is why greater service for others is to help them help themselves, not make them dependent on you, not that you take a role of a savior and people always have to rely on you, but you help them become empowered, become strong, become determined, and then they can deal with anything.
Great. Well, thanks, Akrura, for being with us. I want to give the listeners our email addresses in case they have further questions or they would like some counseling.
Or coaching.
Your address is Akrura, Akrura,